The motorcycle world is buzzing with news about Harley-Davidson's recent struggles. With a 13% decline in North American sales and a 7% year-on-year drop worldwide in 2024, dealers are finding themselves with inventory they need to move quickly. So, what's causing this sudden shift? Outdated features or something deeper? Here are the 10 Harley-Davidson bikes dealers are dumping faster than you would expect. 1. The Roadster. The Harley-Davidson Roadster always felt like the rebel in the lineup, a cafe racer-inspired machine with a mean stance and a growl to match. It was Harley's bold attempt to mix vintage styling with sporty performance, and for a while, it held its own. But in 2025, dealers are quietly letting the Roadster roll out of the spotlight for good. What set the Roadster apart was its unapologetic personality. At the heart of the bike sat a 1,200 cubic centimeter air-cooled Evolution V twin engine, putting out 65 horsepower and 76 pound-feet of torque. That may not sound like a rocket ship, but for what it was built to do, cut through city traffic and tear up back roads, it packed a satisfying punch. The Roadster weighed in at 571 pounds, which gave it just enough heft to feel planted, without turning it into a sluggish cruiser. Paired with a 5-speed transmission, it delivered the kind of visceral riding experience Harley fans love. Throaty, mechanical, and full of attitude. But here is where the Roadster started to lose steam. Comfort. The riding position, meant to capture that classic cafe racer feel, ended up alienating a big chunk of its potential fan base. With low drag-style handlebars and a 30.9-inch seat height, it forced riders into a hunched-over stance that looked aggressive, but quickly turned into a literal pain in the back. Great for short rides, not so great for long hauls. The fuel tank held 3.3 gallons, which was fine for city runs and weekend blasts, but many riders just could not get past the ergonomics. The Roadster's promise of urban speed and retro styling was exciting on paper, but in practice, it was a bit too much commitment for casual riders. Many ended up trading it in after realizing that cool does not always mean comfortable. To make matters trickier, the Roadster was surrounded by in-house competition. The Iron 83, Iron 1200, and 48 all shared similar DNA but offered a more forgiving ride. So when customers walked into dealerships, the Roadster often got overlooked in favor of these more balanced options. Now, with Harley-Davidson moving toward modern platforms and refining its lineup, the Roadster is quietly being phased out in 2025. It will always be remembered as the oddball with a purpose, a bike that tried to blend classic rebellion with cafe racer flair. And while it never quite found a permanent home in the hearts of most Harley buyers, it certainly made a statement while it lasted. 2. The Street 500. The Harley-Davidson Street 500 occupied a unique position in the lineup from 2015 to 2020, serving as the brand's answer to the growing demand for beginner-friendly motorcycles. This bike was specifically engineered to be approachable for new riders, featuring user-friendly characteristics that made the transition from dream to reality as smooth as possible. However, this very accessibility became both its greatest strength and ultimate weakness. The Street 500's air-cooled V-twin engine displaced 73.3 cubic inches and produced 91 horsepower with 73.91 pound-feet of torque, delivered through a 5-speed transmission. At 573 pounds, the bike struck a balance between substantial presence and manageable weight for inexperienced riders. The 3.5-gallon fuel tank provided adequate range for typical riding scenarios, making it practical for both learning and daily commuting. What made the Street 500 particularly appealing to new riders was its predictable behavior and forgiving nature. The power delivery was smooth and linear, without the sudden surges that could catch inexperienced riders off guard. The bike's handling was stable and confidence-inspiring, allowing new riders to focus on developing their skills without worrying about managing an overly aggressive machine. However, the very characteristics that made the Street 500 an excellent learning platform also limited its long-term appeal. As riders gained experience and confidence, they quickly discovered that the bike's gentle nature became a limitation rather than an asset. The engine, while adequate for learning, lacked the excitement and character that riders began craving as their skills developed. The performance that seemed impressive during the first few months of riding soon felt tame and uninspiring. The Street 500's position as a stepping stone rather than a destination bike meant that most owners were already looking ahead to their next purchase before they had fully paid off their first. This created a challenging market dynamic where the bike served its purpose too well, graduating riders out of the market segment faster than new ones entered. 3. The FXDR 114. The FXDR 114 represented Harley-Davidson's most ambitious attempt to create a truly sporty motorcycle that could compete with performance-oriented machines from other manufacturers. This bike was a technical showcase, featuring a lightweight cast aluminum swing arm, race-style front forks, and a monoshock rear suspension system that delivered handling characteristics unlike anything else in the Harley lineup. The heart of the machine was the powerful Milwaukee 8 114 V-twin engine, displacing 114 cubic inches and producing impressive performance figures. The Milwaukee 8 114 engine generated 88.76 horsepower and a substantial 119 pound-feet of torque, transmitted through a 6-speed gearbox that allowed riders to make the most of the available power. At 668 pounds, the FXDR was heavier than pure sport bikes, but still managed to feel agile and responsive thanks to its advanced chassis design. The 4.4-gallon fuel capacity provided reasonable range for performance-oriented riding. From a technical standpoint, the FXDR 114 was everything that performance-minded riders had been asking Harley-Davidson to build. The suspension system delivered excellent feedback and control, the engine provided strong acceleration, and the overall package felt cohesive and purposeful. For the first time in years, Harley had created a motorcycle that could legitimately be called sporty, without any qualifications or excuses. Unfortunately, the FXDR's technical excellence couldn't overcome a fundamental philosophical problem. It didn't look like a Harley-Davidson. The aggressive styling, modern proportions, and performance-oriented details created a motorcycle that resembled European sport cruisers more than traditional American iron. Longtime Harley enthusiasts, who formed the core of the brand's customer base, looked at the FXDR and saw something foreign. 4. The XR1200X. The XR1200X faced the impossible task of following in the footsteps of one of motorcycle racing's most successful machines. The XR750, which earned its place as the winningest motorcycle in AMA Pro Racing history from 1972 to 2008, had set expectations so high that any successor would struggle to match its legacy. The XR1200X was Harley-Davidson's attempt to translate that racing success into a street-legal package that everyday riders could enjoy. The technical specifications of the XR1200X were impressive on paper, featuring a 1,200 cubic centimeter Evolution engine that produced 91 horsepower and 73.91 pound-feet of torque. The bike was equipped with high-performance Michelin Scorcher tires and a sophisticated Showa suspension system designed to deliver the kind of handling that would make aggressive riding both possible and enjoyable. At 573 pounds with a 3.5-gallon fuel tank, the XR1200X had the right proportions for spirited performance. The motorcycle was marketed as being designed for aggressive fun, positioning it as a machine for riders who wanted to experience something closer to the racing heritage that made the XR750 famous. The suspension tuning was sharp and responsive, the engine delivered power in a way that encouraged enthusiastic riding, and the overall package felt more focused than typical Harley offerings. However, the XR1200X couldn't escape the long shadow cast by its legendary predecessor. Racing enthusiasts who remembered the XR750's dominance expected something truly special, while casual riders weren't necessarily drawn to the bike's more aggressive character. The XR1200X found itself caught between two audiences, satisfying neither completely. The presence of other successful Sportster models in the lineup further complicated the XR1200X's market position. The Iron 8, 8.3, and 48 offered similar displacement and performance, but with more traditional Harley styling and broader appeal. Customers who were drawn to the Sportster family often chose these more conventional options leaving the XR1200X as an interesting but ultimately niche offering that struggled to find its audience. 5. The Street Rod. The Harley-Davidson Street Rod represented the company's most direct attempt to attract younger riders who were increasingly turning to other brands for their motorcycle needs. This machine was designed from the ground up to appeal to a demographic that valued modern performance and aggressive styling over traditional cruiser aesthetics. The Street Rod featured contemporary design elements and performance characteristics that were intended to make Harley-Davidson relevant to a new generation of riders. The heart of the Street Rod was a liquid-cooled Revolution X V-twin engine with 750 cubic centimeters of displacement, producing 68 horsepower and 47 pound-feet of torque. This power plant was significantly different from traditional Harley engines, using liquid cooling for better thermal management and more consistent performance. The 6-speed transmission and 480-pound overall weight created a package that felt nimble and responsive compared to heavier Harley models. The Street Rod's styling was deliberately modern and aggressive, with sharp lines and contemporary proportions that looked more at home in urban environments than on traditional touring routes. The bike's 3.5-gallon fuel capacity was adequate for city riding and weekend adventures, while the overall package was designed to be accessible to riders who might be intimidated by larger, heavier motorcycles. Despite these apparent advantages, the Street Rod struggled to connect with its intended audience. Younger riders who were attracted to the bike's modern performance often found the handling characteristics disappointing compared to alternatives from other manufacturers. The Street Rod's handling was adequate, but not exceptional, falling short of the standards set by sport-oriented motorcycles from brands that specialized in performance. Traditional Harley customers, meanwhile, were put off by the bike's departure from classic design principles. The Street Rod looked and felt too different from what they expected from the brand, creating a disconnect that prevented it from finding acceptance among existing customers. The bike's limited customization potential also disappointed riders who expected to be able to personalize their motorcycles extensively. 6. The Electra Glide Standard. The Electra Glide Standard occupied a peculiar position in Harley-Davidson's touring lineup, earning the nickname Dressed Down Dresser for its hybrid approach to the touring motorcycle concept. This bike was essentially a street glide that had been stripped of its high-tech infotainment system while retaining the distinctive batwing fairing that defined the touring aesthetic. The result was a motorcycle that seemed caught between two different philosophies. The Electra Glide Standard was powered by the Milwaukee 8107 V-twin engine, displacing 107 cubic inches and producing 93 horsepower with 111 pound-feet of torque. This power plant provided adequate performance for touring duties, delivered through a 6-speed transmission that offered good gear spacing for highway cruising. At 820 pounds, the bike had the substantial presence expected from a touring machine, while the 6-gallon fuel capacity provided excellent range for long-distance travel. The bike's classic design elements appealed to riders who appreciated traditional Harley aesthetics without the complexity of modern technology. The black finish and clean lines created a timeless appearance that looked equally appropriate on mountain highways and city streets. The comfortable seating position and wind protection from the batwing fairing made long-distance riding pleasant and sustainable. However, the Electra Glide Standard's positioning created confusion in the marketplace. Touring riders who were serious about long-distance travel typically wanted the full range of features available on more expensive models, including advanced navigation, communication, and entertainment systems. The standard's simplified approach appealed to purists, but left serious touring enthusiasts feeling like they were missing important capabilities. Conversely, riders who were attracted to the idea of a simpler, more focused motorcycle often found the Electra Glide Standard too large and complex for their needs. 7. The Dyna Series. The Dyna Series represented one of the longest-running and most beloved lines in Harley-Davidson's history, spanning over 25 years of production and developing a devoted following among riders who appreciated its unique character. These motorcycles occupied a special place in the lineup, offering a riding experience that was distinctly different from both the Sportster and Softail families. The Dyna's eventual discontinuation marked the end of an era for many enthusiasts. The typical Dyna featured an air-cooled Evolution V twin engine with 73.3 cubic inches of displacement, producing 91 horsepower and 73.91 pound-feet of torque through a 5-speed transmission. At 573 pounds with a 3.5-gallon fuel capacity, the Dyna struck a balance between performance and practicality that resonated with a wide range of riders. The engine's characteristics delivered the distinctive Harley sound and feel that customers expected, while providing reliable performance for daily riding. What made the Dyna series special was its unique frame design and suspension setup, which created a riding experience that was neither as rigid as a Sportster nor as cushy as a Softail. This middle ground appealed to riders who wanted some comfort without sacrificing the connected feel that came from a more direct relationship between rider and road. The Dyna's handling characteristics were predictable and confidence-inspiring, making it suitable for everything from daily commuting to weekend touring. The series built a strong reputation among riders who valued versatility and authenticity. Dyna owners appreciated having a motorcycle that could handle daily duties during the week and longer adventures on weekends. The bike's relatively simple design made it accessible for home maintenance, while its robust construction provided the reliability that riders needed for regular use. Unfortunately, the Dyna series became a victim of changing market preferences and corporate strategy. As Harley-Davidson focused on streamlining its lineup and competing with newer models from other manufacturers, the Dyna's traditional approach began to seem outdated. Modern riders increasingly demanded features like better suspension, more advanced engines, and contemporary styling that the aging Dyna platform couldn't easily accommodate. This was all the dealers needed to put a stop to its production. 8. The Softail Deluxe. The Softail Deluxe was Harley-Davidson's love letter to the golden days of American cruising. With its white wall tires, swooping fenders, and plenty of chrome, this bike looked like it rolled straight out of a 50s postcard. But don't let the retro vibe fool you. It packed a modern punch under all that vintage glam. At its heart was the air-cooled twin-cam 103 engine, delivering a beefy 75 horsepower and 100 pound-feet of torque. Paired with a 6-speed transmission, it gave riders that signature Harley rumble and smooth highway cruising. With a 5-gallon tank and fuel economy hovering around 45 miles per gallon, it had both presence and practicality. Weighing in at 670 pounds, it wasn't exactly light, but it had that solid, planted feel riders love on long stretches of road. The Deluxe truly stood out with its throwback design. Chrome details, nostalgic lines, and a low-slung saddle that made you feel like a movie star from another era. Comfort was key, and this bike made even long road trips feel like a breeze. And if you were the type to tinker and customize, the Deluxe was a dream. From exhaust swaps to custom handlebars, it begged for personalization. So, what went wrong? Well, as the motorcycle world started leaning more into tech-savvy features and sharper performance, the Deluxe began to look more dated than nostalgic. Newer riders wanted touchscreen displays and ride modes. Even the loyal retro crowd started exploring other options with similar style, but a little more edge under the hood. 9. The Sportster Iron 883. For many Harley riders, the Iron 883 was their very first taste of freedom on two wheels, the kind of bike you never forget, even if you eventually trade it in. Introduced in 1988, the Iron 883 was Harley-Davidson's way of saying, "Hey, you don't need to drop a fortune to ride with us." It was the gateway into the Harley family, perfect for newer riders who weren't quite ready to wrestle a heavyweight cruiser, but still wanted that classic rumble and street cred. Under the hood, it packed an air-cooled Evolution V-twin with 53.9 cubic inches of displacement, enough to churn out 50 horsepower and 54 pound-feet of torque. Nothing earth-shattering, but more than enough to get your heart racing. The 5-speed transmission and compact frame made it feel quick and responsive, ideal for city streets or weekend joyrides. With a 3.3-gallon fuel tank, it wasn't built for long hauls, but for its size and class, the range was solid. Now, let's talk about the riding position, because that's where things got a bit polarizing. The 30.9-inch seat height and drag-style handlebars looked cool, no doubt. But if you weren't built like a yoga instructor, that hunched-over posture could turn a fun ride into a backache real quick. Great for short sprints, not so much for highway cruising. The Iron 883 also faced an identity crisis of sorts. It was meant to be your starter Harley, but it kind of became the bike you grow out of. Riders often used it as a stepping stone before upgrading to beefier models, which meant a flood of used 883s hit the market every year, dragging down resale value and making new sales a bit harder to justify. Then came its siblings, the Iron 1200 and the 48, offering similar styling but with more muscle and features. If you had a few extra bucks, the upgrade was a no-brainer. So while the 883 had charm, it often felt like the budget pick rather than the bike you truly wanted. And let's be honest, today's entry-level riders are pickier than ever. They want comfort, performance, tech, and maybe a USB port or two. The Iron 883, with its old-school setup and minimal frills, started to look a little long in the tooth compared to what competitors were offering. So while the Iron 883 will always have a place in Harley history as the ride that welcomed thousands into the fold, its time has come to quietly roll off into the sunset. Sometimes even first loves don't last forever. 10. The Sportster Iron 1200. After a short but memorable run, the Sportster Iron 1200 is officially riding off into the sunset in 2025. Harley-Davidson has decided to part ways with this middleweight muscle cruiser, and while it's not exactly shocking, it's still a bit bittersweet, especially for riders who appreciated that perfect mix of throwback style and upgraded performance. Launched in 2018, the Iron 1200 was built to be the next step up from the entry-level Iron 883. It kept all the gritty charm and classic looks of the Sportster line but added a welcome boost in power. Under the tank sat an air-cooled Evolution V-twin engine with 73.4 cubic inches of displacement, kicking out a respectable 65 horsepower and 76 pound-feet of torque. It wasn't built to win races, but it sure knew how to put a grin on your face. At 571 pounds with a 3.3-gallon fuel tank, the Iron 1200 kept things manageable, compact, and punchy. It looked every bit the part too, with mini-ape handlebars, retro tank graphics, blacked-out components, and a seating position that screamed, "I'm cool, but I still ride hard." It captured that classic Harley attitude in a way that felt both familiar and fresh. Customization was, as always with Sportsters, a major selling point. Riders loved turning this bike into their own personal statement, whether that meant beefing up the performance, switching up the bars, or just giving it a little extra shine. It was a solid platform for those who wanted their Harley to be a little less cookie-cutter and a lot more them. But as Harley continues to modernize its lineup, the Iron 1200 just doesn't quite fit the future-forward vision. Between the rise of more advanced platforms like the new Nightster and the flood of used Sportsters still out there, dealers are quietly letting the Iron 1200 fade out in 2025. It's not about the bike being bad, it's just that newer models are offering more of what today's riders expect. Better tech, improved handling, and a smoother overall experience. Still, if you're lucky enough to snag one of the last new Iron 1200s before they disappear, you're getting a piece of Harley history with attitude to spare. It's a good buy, but it's also a reminder that some rides, while short-lived, leave a lasting impression. Which of these bikes did you not expect to see on the list? Drop your thoughts below, and if you love bikes as much as we do, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.